Hello. In this video, I will present the association relationship in Java. If you were to Google this, you will probably find a fair number of different definitions, so this video presents our version. Let's start with a common example. I have a person class as UML here, with the common name and age attributes. I've used this a couple of times before, and then the corresponding code as simple as possible here. Now I want to update the person class with an address. For the UML, I will add attributes for street name, house number, and city. I should update the constructor too, but I will just wait with that for now. I might also update the code with corresponding field variables here. And again, postpone updating the constructor. Now I think that address is a real-world concept. An address is a grouping of several pieces of information. Let me just create the address class and then transfer the relevant attributes like so. And let me just revert the code too. And finally, we need a constructor for the address here. Okay, now I have my two types of object, person and address. But how do I indicate that a person lives at a specific address? We do that with a relationship between the two. For this particular relationship, I use an association. In UML, that is a line with an arrow at the end. This arrow means that the person has an address. I will then also add an attribute to the person to further clarify this. Currently, I have a name of type string and an age of type int, and then I need an attribute of type address. I could just name this attribute address as well, or maybe lives at. It's not too important as long as the name clearly indicates the purpose of the attribute. The relevant part here is the attribute type of address. I now have one class, the person, referencing another class, the address. And this is how we express an association in UML. Let me just add an address parameter to the constructor. Now let's look at the code again and update it according to the diagram. In code, an association is expressed as a field variable so that one object can reference another. Let me add the address field variable and then update the constructor with a third parameter. And finally assigning the parameter to the field. But I seem to have forgotten the address class, so let me just fix that. And excuse the formatting of the three constructor parameters. I had to fit it into the slide. Notice how the association in this case is one directional. The person knows about the address through the field variable, but the address knows nothing about the person. There is no field variable of type person in the address class. This is very common. Almost all of your associations will be one way. There are rare cases with a bidirectional association, but this often complicates things and is just about never necessary. Now, a few things about the association relationship. First, it is loose and flexible. This generally means the reference can be updated to point to a different instance of the same type. Or in this case, to be concrete, it could make sense to add a setAddress method. Maybe the person moves, and we need to update the reference so it now points to the new address. Secondly, there is no strong ownership. This means multiple instances of a class can reference the same instance of a class. In code, it means I can create an instance of the address class and give that address to a person. And because there is no strong ownership, I can also give that address instance to another person instance. Now Anna and Brian lives at the same address. This happens. Maybe they are married. Maybe Brian lives in Anna's basement without her knowing about it. I don't know. So the association, to recap, in UML we indicate this type of relationship with an arrow going from one class pointing to another class the former knows about. Here the person knows about the address, so the arrow points from person to address. The arrow is a full drawn line with an open arrowhead. In upcoming videos you will see many other types of arrows with other purposes. So it is important to be specific with your arrow. It is almost always one directional. In general software terms, we call the object that owns the reference the parent, and the object that is being referenced, we call that the child. This is common terminology. An association is loose and flexible, generally meaning that it can be updated. There is no strong ownership, so multiple instances can reference the same instance. And this is probably the most common explicit relationship you will encounter in software development.